My daughter-in-law took my pension, took my house, and said I should be grateful. But when my daughter came home and opened that door, she uncovered what nearly destroyed me. People say getting older means life slows down. But for me, turning 63 felt like stepping into a quieter kind of loneliness. One nobody warns you about. My name is Evelyn Carter. I worked as a nurse for 35 years. I've held hands with strangers in their final breaths. I've stayed awake through storms, double shifts, flu seasons, and heartbreak seasons. And somehow, after all that, I thought I understood what real pain looked like. But the kind of pain that comes from your own family, that's a pain you never train for. My husband, Daniel, died 6 years ago. Just a heart attack on an ordinary Tuesday. One minute he was watering the plants on our porch. The next minute he was gone. And suddenly, the pension we had both worked for was just mine. $8,000 a month. Enough to live comfortably. Enough to breathe without fear. Enough to age with dignity. I stayed in the house we bought 40 years ago. It's an old, warm, creaky place, with brick walls the color of autumn and windows that fog over in winter. Every scratch on the floor has a memory. Every doorframe has a story. People tried convincing me to move. It's too big for a woman living alone, they'd say. But I didn't want a condo or a retirement apartment. I wanted my home, my garden, my kitchen with the sunlight that always hits at the right angle in the morning. And of all people, I expected my family to understand that. My daughter, Lena, always did. She lives 2 states away, works long hours, and still calls me every Sunday evening. She's gentle, warm, the kind of daughter who remembers the small things, like how I take my coffee, or how I always forget to water the ferns in July. I never told her much about my struggles. I didn't want to be the kind of mother who burdens her child with worry. She has her own life, her own dreams. But my son's wife, Marissa, she saw me differently, like I was some cracked vase taking up space. From the day she married my son, she treated me like an inconvenience. Never directly cruel, just cold, calculated, and sharp in the way only modern polite cruelty can be. She'd say things like, "Older people shouldn't live alone," or, "We'll handle your money better than you can," or, "Evelyn, you should really let us help. You're not as fast as you used to be." Always with a smile, always sounding like she was doing me a favor. I tried to brush it off, tried to convince myself she meant well, but that kind of talk doesn't come from kindness. It comes from entitlement, dressed up in concern. The first real warning sign should have been the way she talked about my house. Every time she visited, she'd walk through the rooms like she was inspecting property she planned to sell. "This house is too big for you," she'd murmur. "You don't even use half of it." Then, with that practiced smile, "You could give it to us someday. It would put it to better use." I hated those conversations. The way she'd run her fingers along the counters. The way she'd open closets without asking. The way she'd comment on renovations she'd make, as if I weren't still standing there. But I stayed quiet. I told myself I was overreacting, that she was just insensitive, not dangerous. Looking back, maybe the signs were there all along. But when it's your own family, you don't want to believe the worst. You don't even want to believe the almost bad. You want to believe the small lies you repeat to yourself. She doesn't mean it. She's young. She'll soften with time. It's not worth arguing, but sometimes silence isn't peace. Sometimes silence is just you handing someone the knife they'll eventually use. I remember one Sunday, Marissa leaned against my kitchen counter, arms folded, while I cooked. She said, almost casually, "Why keep such a big house, Evelyn, when Mark and I could make it a real family home? A real family home." As if mine wasn't. as if 40 years of memories didn't count. I should have said something then. Should have drawn a line. Should have protected what Daniel and I built. But I didn't, because I didn't want conflict, because I didn't want to upset my son, because I didn't want to look like the difficult mother-in-law. And honestly, maybe part of me didn't want to believe she'd ever cross the line. When people you love hurt you, the mind does strange gymnastics, trying to make it make sense. Somewhere deep down, I kept thinking, she's family. She wouldn't go that far. But if there's one thing I learned the hard way, it's this. Family is not defined by blood. Family is defined by who protects you when no one else is watching. Looking back now, the red flags weren't red at all. They were neon signs. And I walked past every single one. Would you? Honestly, if someone in your family acted that way, would you have seen the danger sooner than I did? The day it started didn't look like trouble. Most disasters don't. They look ordinary until they aren't. Marissa came over on a Thursday afternoon, the kind of humid southern day when the air feels heavy enough to push your shoulders down. She walked into my kitchen like she owned the place, heels clicking on the old hardwood floor Daniel laid 40 years ago. "Evelyn," she said, with that practiced, sweet voice, "we need to update some of your insurance paperwork. Just routine stuff." Routine. Nothing about Marissa was ever routine. She placed a stack of documents on my table. Thick, official-looking papers with lines and lines of tiny print. My reading glasses were in the living room, but she waved her hand. "Oh, I already went through most of it," she said. "It's all standard. You just need to sign." I looked at the pages. Too many blanks. Too many signatures. Too much "trust me" in her tone. But my son wasn't home, and I didn't want to cause trouble. I didn't want him to come home to tension or arguments, or that tight look he got whenever he felt stuck between his wife and his mother. So I asked, "Are you sure this is insurance?" Marissa gave a small laugh. "You worry too much. We're trying to help you. Older people shouldn't have to deal with complicated paperwork." Older people. My stomach twisted, but I stayed polite. "Well, if it's really necessary." "It is," she said sharply, then softened her voice. "We just want things to be easier for you. Trust us." Trust. Funny word. I signed where she pointed. Line after line. Date. Signature. Signature again. She left with the pages tucked neatly into her designer bag, smiling like she'd done me a favor. I should have felt relief. Instead, something inside me tugged. A small, uneasy pull I ignored. Looking back now, maybe that was the moment everything shifted. Maybe the truth was already cracking right then. But hindsight is a cruel storyteller. It always arrives late. A week passed, then another. The first strange thing happened at the grocery store. I slid my debit card into the machine, reached for the bag of apples I always bought, and the cashier said, "Ma'am, your card isn't going through." I blinked. "That doesn't make sense." We tried again. Declined. My heart thudded. I had money. I always paid my bills. My pension always came on the 3rd. I used a credit card instead, but the embarrassment clung to me all the way home. When I checked my online banking, my password didn't work. Incorrect, incorrect, incorrect. I called the bank and they told me, "Your security info was updated last week, Mrs. Carter." "Updated?" I whispered. "By who?" "According to our system, a co-owner on the account." Co-owner? I never added anyone. A chill slid down my spine. I hung up and called my son. No answer. I texted. No reply. I tried not to think the worst, but the worst was already thinking of me. 2 days later, my electricity bill showed up, but not in my mailbox. It was lying on the hallway table at Marissa's house when I visited. She picked it up casually. "Oh, this came with our mail. Must have gotten mixed in," but something in her tone felt off. Too rehearsed. When I opened the envelope, a yellow notice slipped out. Final warning before disconnection. I stared at it, stunned. I paid this, I said. Marissa shrugged. Well, I guess you didn't. She took the bill from my hand. Too quickly. We'll handle it, Evelyn. From now on, let us manage your money. It's just too much for you. Too much for me. She said it like I was a burden. Like I was a toddler, fumbling with crayons. Like I hadn't worked my entire life to earn every dollar in that pension. But she wasn't done. You know, the house paperwork you signed really helps, she added. Now we can make sure everything runs smoothly. House paperwork? My fingers went cold. That was insurance, I whispered. She smiled. Slow. Controlled. No, Evelyn. It was authorization. Financial authorization. Property authorization. Then she leaned in so close, I could smell her perfume. Your house is ours now. Your pension is ours now. And you, she paused, letting her eyes travel up and down my frame, should be grateful. I felt something inside me crack, quiet but sharp. Grateful. For what? For losing everything. She walked past me, grabbed her keys, and added, Honestly, you should be thanking us. You weren't managing things well. I stood frozen on the spot. My hands shook. Where's my money? I managed to ask. She turned back at the door. Handled. Don't worry about it. And she left. Just like that. I wanted to run after her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the authorization papers apart and take back every signature. But I didn't know what I'd signed. I didn't know how deep the damage went. And the shame. Oh, the shame. It sank into my bones. How could I have been so blind? I went home that night and opened my fridge. A half carton of milk, 2 eggs, 1 small container of butter. That was all. I tell you, I stood there, staring into that empty refrigerator, and for the first time in my life, I felt old. Not in my bones, not in my joints, but in the way people look at you when they've already decided your worth. I boiled a packet of instant noodles and ate it, standing over the sink. The cold kitchen light flickered above me, and the hunger twisted in my stomach. Not physical hunger, but a hunger for dignity, for control, for something, anything, that still belonged to me. Looking back now, maybe the signs were everywhere. Maybe I should have known. But honestly, if someone you love hands you papers, smiles kindly, uses words like help and support, would you have questioned it? Would you have read every line? Or would you, like me, have trusted them? Be honest, because trust is the easiest door to open and the hardest one to close. The weeks that followed didn't feel real. They felt like someone had picked up my life, turned it upside down, and then walked away while everything inside me spilled onto the floor. It started small, almost invisible. That's how abuse works. It never arrives as a monster. It arrives as a shadow. One morning, I woke up to find my house key didn't fit the lock. I jiggled it, tried again, then again. The metal scraped uselessly. I stood on my own front porch, heart pounding, staring at the door I'd opened every morning for 40 years. My home, my space, my memories. A door that once welcomed me, now refused to let me in. I called Marissa. She answered like nothing was wrong. Oh, right, she said casually. We changed the locks. Safety reasons. Safety? I whispered. Why didn't you tell me? I'm telling you now. I need a key, Marissa. Oh no, I'll keep the new keys with me. We just don't want you misplacing them. You know, older people forget things. Those words hit so hard my knees almost buckled. Older people forget things. But the thing is, I didn't forget anything. I remembered everything. Every insult wrapped in sugar. Every kindness coated in ownership. Every step she took deeper into my home, into my life, without permission. I asked her again. I need a key, and I need you to trust me, she said sharply. This is for your own good. She hung up before I could respond. After that day, The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Marissa moved things around. Things Daniel and I had chosen together. Furniture, kitchenware, photos. She replaced my curtains with something modern and expensive looking. She bought a new rug, a new couch, a new dining table I never asked for. Every change felt like she was repainting my life, without asking what colors I liked. But the worst was when she pointed at the rocking chair Daniel had built for me during his final year. "We should get rid of this old thing," she said. "It doesn't match the house anymore." Match the house, as if the house was a fashion accessory, as if I was the outdated thing that no longer belonged. I held the chair close, fingers running across its worn edges, fighting back tears. "That chair stays," I said quietly. Marissa gave a fake little laugh. "Well, for now." The next week, my heating stopped working. I called the electric company. They said the bill hadn't been paid. Not for 2 months. "Impossible," I whispered. "I always pay my bills." The woman on the phone paused. "Mrs. Carter, someone changed the billing address and payment method. Everything now goes to another household." I didn't need to ask which one. I went to speak with Marissa, but she brushed me off. "You're using too much heat," she said. "We turned it off to keep costs down. It's not that cold." But it was cold. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones. The kind that hits older people differently. The kind that takes you by surprise. That night, I slept in 2 sweaters and socks. My breath fogged the air in the darkness. My fingers stiffened. I could have turned the heat back on, but Marissa had updated all the accounts. Everything was under her control. Everything. Food became the next thing she took. One day, I opened my refrigerator and realized something was wrong. It wasn't just emptier than usual. It was almost completely bare. Milk, a week old, half a stick of butter, 1 apple, leftover rice. And that was it. I opened the cabinets. Instant noodles, canned soup, cheap snacks. The pension I worked 35 years for, $8,000 a month, was nowhere in sight. I called Marissa again. "My fridge is empty," I said. "Where's the grocery money?" "You don't need to spend so much," she replied. "We're rationing things to make your money last. You should be thankful." Thankful. That word again. Like I was supposed to kneel down and praise her for stealing my independence. "Marissa," I said, trying to stay calm, "I need real meals. I can't live on noodles." She sighed loudly, like I was a burden. "Older stomachs don't need heavy foods. You should be eating light anyway." Light. She meant cheap. But I didn't argue. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of hearing the shake in my voice. The hunger hit slowly. At first, it was just a faint ache. Then it grew sharper. Then it turned into dizziness, headaches, trembling hands. I went from 3 meals a day to 2 to 1, half a sandwich, a small bowl of soup, a banana. Some days, just tea and crackers. My weight dropped. My clothes loosened. My reflection looked older than my age. But every time I tried to tell Marissa, she'd say, "You're fine. You're dramatic. You're not starving. You're just bored. Be grateful we're helping." Grateful. People weaponize that word when they want you small. One evening, I overheard her talking to her friends in the living room. Her voice floated through the hallway, confident and proud. "This is basically my house now," she said. "She's old. She doesn't need all this space. We're just managing things better." They laughed. My legs went weak. I gripped the doorway to stay standing. My house, my husband's memory, my name on the deed. And she was boasting about owning it, as if I were already dead. The cold nights got worse. The food got scarcer. My strength slipped away. One morning, I woke up with my head spinning, vision blurry. I tried to stand, but my knees buckled. I crawled to the edge of the bed. Gasping for breath, I whispered, "Something is wrong. Something is so wrong." But the house was silent. Marissa wasn't there. My son wasn't there. No one was there. When I reached the kitchen, My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't open the cabinet. The whole room swayed. I remember thinking, is this how it ends? In my own home, while someone else controls the keys? Everything went dark after that. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I opened my eyes, 2 paramedics were kneeling beside me, lifting me onto a stretcher. A neighbor stood by the door, pale and terrified. She found her on the floor, one paramedic said. Severe hypoglycemia, mild hypothermia. She hasn't eaten properly in days. I wanted to speak, to explain, but the words wouldn't come out. The neighbor leaned close and whispered, "Honey, what did they do to you?" And that was the first moment I realized. Someone finally saw it. Someone finally understood. Someone finally knew I wasn't imagining it. And maybe that's all it takes for a trapped person to breathe again. One witness, one person who says, "This isn't normal." Looking back now, I wonder if anyone would have believed me sooner, if I had spoken up. But ask yourself, really ask yourself, if the abuse came from someone inside your own family, someone others saw as kind, responsible, helpful, would you have realized it? Or would you, like me, keep giving them the benefit of the doubt until there was nothing left of you? I don't remember the ambulance siren. I don't remember being lifted off the kitchen floor. I barely remember the cold stinging my skin as they carried me outside. What I do remember is one thing, the neighbor's voice trembling when she said, "She's not okay. Someone needs to help her." It had been so long since anyone spoke up for me that the words cut deeper than the pain in my chest. At the hospital, everything smelled like antiseptic and quiet panic. They hooked me to IV fluids so fast, the tape barely stuck to my arm. A nurse pressed warm blankets around me, like I was something fragile. "Your blood sugar was dangerously low," she said. "When's the last time you ate a full meal?" I opened my mouth, nothing came out. How was I supposed to explain that my own daughter-in-law, someone I once welcomed into my home, had rationed my meals like I was a stray dog? So I said the only thing I could manage. "A while." The nurse frowned, but didn't push. Bless her. Later, a doctor came in, early 40s, kind eyes. He sat beside my bed, not above it. "Mrs. Carter, hypoglycemia at this level doesn't happen overnight," he said. "You've been under-eating for some time. Was it intentional?" Intentional? I almost laughed. Nothing about my life lately felt intentional. Everything felt like something happening to me. "I've been short on groceries," I whispered. He studied my face as if he could see every secret I didn't say. "Do you live alone?" And there it was, the question that broke something open in my throat. "No," I said softly. "I live with family." His expression changed. Not dramatic, just careful. Doctors learn to recognize the cracks people hide behind. He nodded once, gently. "Well, you're safe here. That's what matters. Safe." I couldn't remember the last time I felt that. When he left, I stared at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights hummed softly. For the first time in months, I realized how exhausted I truly was. Not tired in the body, tired in my soul. Tired of begging quietly. Tired of shrinking myself so others felt big. Tired of pretending everything was fine so my children wouldn't worry. Especially Lena. Sweet, bright, careful Lena. The daughter who checked on me constantly. The daughter I hid the truth from because I didn't want to drag her into my shame. Lying in that sterile bed, hooked to an IV, the truth settled like a stone. If I didn't tell her now, I might not live long enough to tell her later. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone on the tray table. The screen lit up too bright in the dim room, and for a moment, my own reflection startled me. I looked older than 63, thinner, hollow in ways I didn't know the body could be. I pressed her name. She answered on the second ring. "Mom, are you okay?" The sound of her voice undid me. My throat clenched. Tears stung. "I'm in the hospital," I whispered. Silence, sharp, immediate. "What happened?" I hesitated. The truth tasted like rust on my tongue. "Lena, I think something is wrong. I fainted. I haven't been eating right." "Why?" she demanded. "You get $8,000 a month, Mom. Why aren't you eating? What happened?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was terrified. My heart cracked a little at the edges. "Marissa, she's been handling my accounts, and the house, and everything." "Handling," Lena repeated slowly, like she was unwrapping a bomb. I swallowed. "I don't think she's been helping." There was a sound on the other end. A shaky inhale, followed by the rustle of fabric. "Mom," she said, voice breaking, "tell me exactly what she did." And so I told her. Not everything. Not the darkest parts. Just enough to paint the picture. The missing groceries, the cold nights, the locked doors, the empty fridge, the bills I never saw, the pension I couldn't access. Each confession felt like peeling off a bandage that had been stuck to me for months. When I finished, Lena didn't speak for 5 full seconds. Then she said, in a voice that didn't sound like my daughter at all, "I'm coming home." "Lena, you have work, honey." "I don't care," she snapped. "I'm not staying here while my mother is being starved in her own home." Her voice shook with fury, a fury I wasn't used to hearing from her. "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't want to burden you. Because I didn't want to ruin your peace. Because I didn't want to sound paranoid. Because I didn't want to admit my own child's wife treated me like a prisoner. But most of all, because I didn't want her to know how weak I had become." "I didn't want to worry you," I whispered. "Worry me?" she repeated. "Mom, you almost died." The words hit me like a physical blow. Almost died. In my own home. Under the control of someone who was supposed to be family. Someone I trusted. "Don't move," Lena said. "Don't sign anything. Don't go anywhere. I'm getting on a plane. I'll be there tonight." And before I could protest, she hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand. Heart pounding, breath shallow. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something warm rising inside me. Not fear, not hunger, not shame. Something like hope, a fragile hope, trembling in my chest. Because when you've been silent for too long, even one person saying, "I'm coming," can sound like rescue. Even one person believing you can feel like oxygen. Even one person coming home can change everything. And I didn't know it then, but that phone call, that single moment, was the beginning of the end. Not of me, but of Marissa. I didn't sleep much that night in the hospital. Not because of the machines beeping softly. Not because of the stiff bed, but because of one thought that kept circling my mind. Lena is coming home, and nothing will ever be the same. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or ashamed. Maybe both. When morning came, a nurse brought me warm oatmeal and orange juice. Simple, bland, normal. But after weeks of barely eating, it felt like a feast. I swallowed slowly, trying not to cry at how something so small felt so human again. Around 9 a.m., I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. Before I could turn, the door burst open and there she was. My daughter, Lena, hair messy from the flight, eyes red from crying, breath sharp with fear and fury. "Mom," she breathed out, rushing to my side. "Oh my God!" "Mom." She cupped my face gently, her hands warm against my cold skin. And in that moment, I saw everything she tried to hide. The anger, the panic, the guilt, the love. "I'm okay," I whispered. But we both knew that wasn't true. She pulled up a chair and took my hand. "Tell me everything," she said softly. "Every single thing you didn't tell me before." Her voice wasn't angry now. It was steady, focused, like she'd stepped into a role she never expected to play. So I told her, not everything. Some wounds needed time to peel open. But enough. Enough for her eyes to darken. Enough for her jaw to tighten. Enough for her to whisper, "She won't get away with this." Within an hour, she was driving me home. The moment we turned onto my street, her hands tightened on the steering wheel. My house stood there like it always had. But something was different. The curtains Marissa chose. The new doormat I never liked. The front yard trimmed in a way I didn't approve. Changes that looked small to anyone else, but felt like theft to me. When we pulled into the driveway, Lena turned off the engine and looked at me. "Mom," she said, "I need you to let me handle the talking, okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. Barely 3 steps up the walkway, the front door cracked open. Marissa stood there, arms folded across her chest, eyebrows raised. "Oh, you're back," she said flatly. Then she leaned sideways and spotted Lena. "Oh, it's you." Lena didn't flinch. "Move," she said. Marissa blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said move," Lena repeated, her voice low and cold. Marissa stepped into the doorway, blocking it with her body. "Your mother needs rest," she said sweetly. "She doesn't need stress. You coming here is making her worse." "Really?" Lena said. "Because from what I've seen, you are what's making her worse." Marissa's eyes sharpened. "I'm her caregiver." "No," Lena snapped. "You're her jailer." The air cracked between them. "Get out of my way," Lena said again. "No, she lives here with us now. You don't just walk in and disrupt everything." Lena pushed forward, and just like that, the standoff turned physical. Marissa grabbed the edge of the door, but Lena shoved it open with a strength I didn't know she had. The door slammed into the wall, making Marissa stumble back. "Don't touch," Marissa started, but Lena had already stepped inside. "Mom," Lena said without looking back, "stay with me." I followed her into my own home, a home that suddenly didn't feel like mine. And then Lena saw it. The living room, stripped of everything familiar, decorated with expensive, modern furniture that didn't belong. Cold tones, sharp lines, soulless. It didn't look like a home. It looked staged, like a catalog. Lena walked slowly, eyes wide. "Where's your couch?" she demanded. Marissa shrugged, smoothing her hair. "It didn't match." "Match?" Lena echoed, voice rising. "Match? That couch was older than I am." "It was old," Marissa said. "I upgraded, like the people who lived here were objects she could replace." Lena marched toward the kitchen. I followed, heart pounding. The refrigerator door opened. Lena froze. Then she whispered, barely audible, Mom." Inside the fridge were 3 items. Half a milk carton, a container of butter, a single apple. That was all. Lena turned slowly toward Marissa. Her expression didn't look like anger anymore. It looked like something deeper, something dangerous. "Where is her food?" Marissa rolled her eyes. "She eats too much junk. We're monitoring her diet." "Monitoring?" Lena repeated. "She's old," Marissa snapped. "She doesn't need that much." Lena slammed the refrigerator door so hard the magnets fell off. "Monitoring?" she said again. "She fainted. She was hospitalized. She was hypothermic. And you say you're monitoring." Marissa stepped back. "She exaggerates. She almost died," Lena shouted. The sound shook the kitchen walls. "And you starved her in her house?" Marissa's face twisted. "She's being dramatic," she hissed. "She has plenty. She just forgets." Lena spun around and stormed toward the bedroom hallway. "Lena," I called, but she wasn't stopping. She opened every door. Guest room, pristine, perfect. Office room, spotless. Storage room, reorganized. But when she reached my bedroom, she grabbed the knob and pulled. It didn't budge. "It's locked," she said. Marissa crossed her arms. "She doesn't need access to that." Lena turned. She doesn't need access? To her own room? Marissa shrugged. It's safer this way. Lena faced her fully. Give me the key. No. Give me the key. No. Lena shoved past her, heading straight for the laundry drawer, where spare keys used to be kept. Empty. Marissa snatched her purse. Stop digging through my things. Lena ignored her. Rummaged through cabinets, drawers, nothing. Finally, she grabbed Marissa's bag and dumped it upside down. The key fell out. Marissa lunged for it, but Lena caught it midair, her movements sharp, precise. She unlocked my bedroom door, and inside, my world shattered. My clothes were stuffed into trash bags. My quilts were tossed in a corner. My photos, Daniel's photos, were gone. The room smelled like dust and neglect. The only furniture left was a thin mattress on the floor. One dim bulb hung from the ceiling. A single blanket, folded neatly at the foot of the mattress. Lena clamped a hand over her mouth. Mom, she whispered, you slept here? I couldn't speak. Tears slid down my cheeks silently. Marissa finally snapped. She doesn't need more than that. She barely uses the space. Lena turned slowly, and when she spoke, her voice wasn't loud. It was quiet, cold, sharp as broken glass. You locked my mother in a room with no heat, no blankets, no food, in her own house? Then Lena stepped forward, and Marissa actually backed up. You think you're smart, don't you? Lena said. You think people will believe your lies? Marissa's chin trembled. You think no one will find out? She tried to speak. Nothing came out. But Lena wasn't done. She yanked open the desk drawer. And there it was, stacks of bills, financial statements, my pension account, emptied, authorization papers with my signature, real estate listing drafts, notes about market value for the house, a preliminary sale document. Lena froze, staring. Then she said the exact words that split the air in half. You were trying to sell my mother's house. Marissa snapped. Because she doesn't deserve it. She doesn't even need it. I've put in more work in this house than she ever... Lena stepped toward her, fire in her eyes. You starved her. You controlled her money. You locked her in a room. You tried to sell her home. You nearly killed her. For the first time, Marissa didn't have a comeback. Lena grabbed me gently by the arm. Mom, pack what you can. We're leaving. I hesitated. Marissa shrieked. You're not taking her. But Lena turned, eyes burning. Watch me. And that was when I realized this wasn't just a daughter coming home. This was justice, finally walking through the door. And Marissa had no idea what was coming next. Lena didn't give Marissa a chance to say another word. She pulled out her phone, opened the camera, and began recording everything. My tiny room, the mattress on the floor, the single thin blanket, the bags of my clothes stuffed into the corner, the thermostat reading 58 degrees, the empty fridge, the financial documents. Lena, stop, Marissa shouted. You can't record in here. Oh, I can, Lena said calmly. This is my mother's house, and you have been abusing her. Marissa froze. I could see the panic forming behind her eyes, growing like cracks in glass. Lena walked closer. Tell me, she said, voice trembling with rage she was trying hard to control. What part of this looks like helping? Marissa backed away. You don't understand. Oh, I understand, Lena said. I understand that you've been starving a 63-year-old woman. You've been taking her pension. You've been changing her locks. And you've been trying to sell her home. That's not what this is, Marissa stuttered. Then what is it? Lena snapped. Marissa opened her mouth. No words came out. Lena's face hardened. That's what I thought. She stepped past Marissa and went to the living room. Mom, she said, get your coat. We're leaving. My legs shook, not with fear, but with something else. A mix of disbelief and awakening. For the first time in months, I felt seen. But Marissa rushed ahead and blocked the front door. "You can't leave," she shouted. "You can't! She lives here now." "No," Lena said quietly. "She lives in a house that she owns. A house you tried to take." Marissa slammed her hand against the door. "She's old. She doesn't know what's good for her. She needs me." "No," Lena repeated. "What she needs is safety. And you are the last person who can provide that." Marissa's voice cracked. "You can't take her away. Mark won't allow it. He said I'm handling everything. He trusts me." Lena narrowed her eyes. "And why do you think he trusts you?" she asked coldly. "Because you've been lying to him too." That sentence hit harder than anything else. Marissa blinked. Lena stepped forward. "He doesn't know the pension is empty, does he? He doesn't know you locked my mother in that room. He doesn't know you called the house yours. He doesn't know you plan to sell it." Marissa's breath hitched. "He thinks you're taking care of her. But you weren't caring for her. You were killing her slowly, one empty grocery day at a time." Marissa screamed. "I was not." The scream echoed through the house. But before she could finish her sentence, the front door suddenly opened. A neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, was standing on the porch, hands shaking. "I heard shouting," she said. "Is everything all right? Do you—" Then her gaze fell on me, on my pale face, my trembling hands, my thin frame. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh honey, this has gone too far." Lena spoke without looking at her. "Mrs. Henderson, could you stay right here? You're a witness." Marissa's face drained of color. "Witness?" she repeated. "Witness to what?" "To elder abuse," Lena said sharply. "To financial exploitation. To neglect. To everything you've done." "I didn't— No, this is wrong." Mrs. Henderson's voice was firm, stronger than I'd ever heard it. "I saw her being taken in an ambulance," she said. "I called 911. I saw her nearly freeze on her porch. I saw you yelling at her last week. I saw too much to pretend anymore." Marissa's lip trembled. "This isn't fair." "Oh, this is fair," Lena said. "This is the fairest thing that has happened in this house in a long time." And then Lena pulled out her phone again. "This ends now." She dialed 911. Marissa panicked. No, you can't call the police on family." Lena held the phone to her ear. "You stopped being family the moment you tried to sell her house." Marissa lunged for the phone. Lena jerked back. They stumbled into the hallway. "Stop! Stop!" Marissa screamed. "You're ruining everything. I worked so hard for this. This house is mine. I deserve it more than she does." Everything froze. Everything went silent. Those words, those exact words, were the truth she'd been trying to hide all along. "You deserve it," Lena whispered. "More than my mother." "Yes," Marissa screamed. "She's old. She doesn't need it. I've done more for this house in 1 year than she ever did." It was the kind of statement that could only come from someone who had never understood the meaning of home. The call connected. 911. "What's your emergency?" Lena didn't look away from Marissa. "Yes," she said calmly into the phone. "I need officers at my mother's residence. We have a case of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and unlawful control of property." Marissa let out a choked scream. "You can't do this." Lena ended the call. "I already did," she said. Marissa stood there, shaking, gripping the doorknob as if she could hold the entire house together with her fists. "You're lying," she said. "They won't believe you. They'll believe me. I'm the caregiver." Lena stepped forward. "You starved her." "That's not—" "You froze her." "I didn't—" "You emptied her pension. That money was—" "You locked her in a room. That was—" "You tried to sell her house." Marissa's voice cracked. Her eyes darted between me, Lena, and Mrs. Henderson. Then her shoulders slumped. Her chest heaved. She sank against the wall, hands tangled in her hair. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You don't understand what I've sacrificed. How much pressure I was under. How much I deserved. That's the thing, Lena said quietly. Everyone deserves something, but not at the cost of someone else's life. Marissa began pacing in frantic circles, muttering to herself, "No, no, no, I can fix this. I can fix this. Mark will understand. He has to. He has to." It was denial. Full, desperate denial. The kind people fall into when the truth finally catches them. Outside, we heard the distant wail of sirens. Marissa froze. Her breath hitched. Her hands went limp. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." As the sirens grew louder, Lena turned to me. "Mom," she said softly, "get your coat. You don't need to stay here a second longer." My legs felt weak as I walked toward the hallway closet. My coat hung there, untouched, smelling faintly of cedar and winter. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I thought I'd lost. I slipped it on. Each sleeve felt like another part of my dignity returning. The knock came next, sharp, authoritative. "Police, open the door." Lena walked forward and opened it. 2 officers stood there, one male, one female, both serious, both calm. "Ma'am," the female officer said, "we received a report of elder abuse and financial exploitation. We need to speak with everyone present." Lena nodded. "Thank you," she said. "Please come in." Marissa immediately stepped forward. "This is a misunderstanding," she cried. "I take care of her. I manage everything. They're lying." The officers didn't even flinch. The female officer asked, "Ma'am, do you have documentation showing legal authority to control her finances and property?" Marissa's mouth opened, closed, opened again. She had the papers, but she didn't have the truth. Lena handed over the stack of documents she'd found. "Her signatures were obtained under false pretenses," Lena said, "and she has been locked in this room." She opened my bedroom door. With no heat, no blankets, and barely any food, the officers stepped inside the room. Their faces said everything. Marissa tried again. "She's dramatic. She forgets. She can't." The female officer lifted a hand. "Ma'am, stop speaking." Marissa's mouth snapped shut. "Mrs. Carter," the officer said gently, turning to me, "are you safe in this home?" For the first time in months, I felt like someone was asking me what I wanted. I took a breath. "No," I whispered. "No, I'm not safe here." And with those words, something inside me broke. Not in a painful way, but in a freeing way. It felt like exhaling after months of holding my breath. The officer nodded. "Thank you. We're going to make sure you are." She turned to Marissa. "Ma'am, step aside. We need to ask you some questions." Marissa sank onto the floor in shock as the officers separated us. Lena wrapped her arm around me. "Mom," she whispered, "you're not going back in there, ever." And for the first time in a long, long time, I believed her, because sometimes justice doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives in a police uniform, with calm voices and questions that peel back every lie someone built their power on. Sometimes justice arrives the exact moment you stop staying silent. And as the officers led Marissa away for questioning, I realized something. This wasn't the end of the fight, not even close, but it was the end of her control over me. And that alone felt like a kind of victory. The officers didn't arrest Marissa that day. At least, not yet. But they did escort her outside, separating her from the house she'd claimed as her own. I watched from the porch as she paced back and forth, her arms shaking, her breaths short and frantic. Lena stood beside me the entire time, her hand wrapped around mine, like she was guarding something fragile. I didn't feel fragile, not anymore, just tired, bone-deep tired. One officer, the woman with calm eyes, walked back toward us. "Mrs. Carter," she said softly, "we'll need a formal statement, and you'll need to request an emergency protective order. We can help you start that today." I nodded. "Thank you," I whispered. "Also," she added, We strongly recommend that you do not remain in the house tonight." Lena didn't even let me respond. "She's coming home with me," she said. The officer nodded once. As they stepped toward Marissa, she snapped, "This is harassment. You can't just walk into someone's home and take their property. I'm calling my attorney. I'm calling everyone." Her voice cracked on that last word. Everyone. Funny thing is, people like her always think everyone is on their side. Until the truth comes out. We left the house within 20 minutes. Lena helped me pack the bare essentials. Though packing was heartbreaking in itself, every drawer she opened, every corner she checked, every closet she pulled open revealed more neglect. Dust, cold, frayed blankets, bills with red warnings, notes scribbled in Marissa's handwriting about market value, potential buyers, renovations needed before sale. It was like watching someone take apart my life piece by piece. "Mom," Lena whispered once, "we're getting all of this back. I promise." I wanted to believe her, but I also knew battles like these don't end cleanly. As we walked out to the driveway, Marissa lunged forward. "Lena, please," she begged. "You're misunderstanding everything. I never meant to hurt her." Lena didn't stop. "You starved her," she said. "You don't get to rewrite that." "But you don't understand," Marissa said again, her voice crumbling. "Mark, he'll be devastated." Lena turned. "Good," she said. "He should know who he married." Marissa froze. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. "You can't tell him," she whispered. "You can't. You'll ruin everything." Lena's expression didn't change. "No," she said. "You ruined everything." And with that, she opened the car door for me and helped me inside. Marissa broke. She dropped to the ground on her knees, sobbing, clutching her hair. The officers had to help her stand again. It was the first time I saw her look small. By the time we reached Lena's home, the sun was beginning to set. She made me tea, warmed a blanket in the dryer, turned on soft lamps instead of overhead lights. And for the first time in months, someone made a space feel like home for me. I didn't realize how starved I'd become for simple kindness. After dinner, real dinner, with fresh food and hot soup, I finally felt strong enough to talk. Lena sat across from me, elbows on her knees. "Mom," she said softly, "I need to know everything she did. All of it. Because tomorrow morning, I'm meeting with an attorney." I nodded, so I told her more. About the empty bills, the pension I couldn't access, the locked doors, the lost house key, the nights without heat, the days with almost no food, the shame, the fear, the helplessness. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. Lena cried for me. "Mom," she whispered, "I swear to you, she's not going to get away with this. Not with any of it." And for the first time, I believed her. The next morning, we sat in a lawyer's office. Mahogany desk, diplomas on the wall, a view of the city skyline outside the window. The lawyer, Mr. Sanderson, listened quietly as Lena explained everything. When she finished, he turned to me. "Mrs. Carter," he said gently, "I'm going to ask you a difficult question, and I need you to answer honestly." I nodded. "Do you feel you were coerced when signing financial documents?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Were you aware that the documents gave your daughter-in-law financial control?" "No." "Were you denied access to your own funds?" "Yes." "Denied access to your home or parts of it?" "Yes." "Were your living conditions intentionally restricted or controlled?" My throat tightened. "Yes." He leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly, and steepled his fingers. "This is no longer a family dispute," he said. "This is elder financial abuse, fraud, and possibly intentional neglect." Lena swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means," he continued, "we can pursue criminal charges. And we absolutely should. Your mother's pension will be restored. Her house is legally hers. Marissa has no claim to it. Any financial transactions made under coerced authorization can be reversed, and your mother can request a restraining order. Marissa's entire world, everything she'd built on lies, was starting to collapse. I didn't feel joy, just relief. A thin, fragile kind of relief, like air entering a room that had been sealed too long. Then Mr. Sanderson added, "There is one more thing." Lena and I both looked at him. "Your son," he said gently. "He needs to be informed. He may be impacted emotionally or legally, depending on his involvement." My chest tightened. Mark. My boy, quiet, responsible, trusting, blind. Had he known? Had he guessed? Had he seen pieces of it and chosen not to look closer? I didn't want to find out, but we had to. Lena put her hand over mine. "Mom," she said, "I'll call him, but we tell him together." I nodded, even though my stomach twisted into knots. Mark arrived that evening. He hurried into the living room, eyes wide, jacket half-zipped, like he'd run from the car to the front door. "Mom," he said, rushing to me. I stood. He pulled me into his arms. I felt him shaking. "I heard you were in the hospital," he said, voice cracking. "I didn't know. Lena didn't tell me until this morning." "Mom, what happened?" I didn't speak. I didn't have the strength to answer that question. Not when the truth was sitting like broken glass in my chest. Lena stepped between us. "Mark," she said gently, "we need to talk." He turned to her, confused. "What's going on? Marissa said your mother was fine. She said you were—" "She lied," Lena said softly. Mark blinked. "What?" "She lied," Lena repeated. "About everything." Then she told him, not with fury, not with drama, just truth, plain, cold, heavy. His eyes widened, then narrowed, then flickered with disbelief. "No," he whispered. "No, Marissa wouldn't. She wouldn't do that." "She did," Lena said. He shook his head. "You're exaggerating. She told me your mother." Lena cut him off. "Go look at her room," she said quietly. "What?" He frowned. "The mattress, the locks, the empty fridge, the bank statements, the authorization forms, the real estate listings." Mark stumbled back a step. No man wants to believe he married a monster, especially when he mistook her cruelty for competence. I didn't know," he whispered. "I swear, Mom, I didn't know." I nodded softly. "I know you didn't." He dropped onto the couch, head in his hands. "Oh, God, what did she do? What did I let happen?" Lena sat beside him. "It's not your fault," she said gently. "She manipulated you too." His voice broke. "But I should have seen it. I should have known—" "Mark," I whispered, "abusers don't always hit. They don't always scream. Sometimes they smile and say they're helping." He looked at me, eyes wet. "I'm so sorry, Mom." I reached for his hand. "It wasn't your job to protect me from her lies," I said softly. "It was her job, not to lie." He swallowed hard. "What happens now?" he whispered. And that was the moment the weight of reality truly settled. Lena answered. "Now," she said, "we let the law take over." 3 days later, Marissa was officially served with a restraining order, notice of financial investigation, a summons for questioning, a preliminary fraud complaint, a report filed under elder abuse statutes. When the officers delivered the paperwork, she screamed, cried, begged, denied, accused. Everything desperate people do when the walls finally close in. Mark went to see her once. Once was enough. He came back home with red eyes and a grief heavier than mine. "She never even said sorry," he whispered. "She said we ruined her life." I touched his shoulder gently. "People like her," I said, "always see themselves as the victim when the truth comes out." He let out a broken laugh. "She kept saying the house was hers, that she deserved it." I met his eyes. "She never earned a single brick of that house. You did. Lena did. Your father did. I did. But she She just wanted to own what she never built. Mark covered his face with his hands. "Oh God, what have I done?" "You trusted someone," I said softly. "There's no sin in trusting. The sin is in betraying that trust." The legal process took weeks, but the collapse of Marissa's world happened fast. Her access revoked, her lies exposed, her reputation questioned, her financial trail uncovered, her manipulation documented. Every step was a blow to the empire she built on my pension, my house, and my silence. And every step brought me closer to something I hadn't felt in months. Myself. But even as justice moved forward, one truth lingered. When someone tears apart a family, even justice doesn't sew it back together perfectly. Some rips remain. Some trust never returns. Some wounds don't heal cleanly. And I didn't know yet whether forgiveness would ever fit into this story. All I knew was the storm that Marissa created was finally breaking. But what would rise from the wreckage? That was still unknown. And maybe that was where Orion Sage would come in. In the days that followed, the house was quiet again. Not the cold silence Marissa created, but a different kind. A tired, aching stillness. The kind that settles after a storm, tears everything open. Mark barely spoke. He moved through rooms like someone wandering through the ruins of a life he thought he understood. One evening, after he'd gone to bed, I sat alone in Lena's guest room, the soft lamplight warming the edges of the walls, and for the first time since all this began, I let myself breathe without fear. And that was when I heard it. Not a voice in the room, but a memory wrapped in the steady calm I once heard only from one person, Orion Sage. He had spoken to me years ago, during a hard season I barely survived, and somehow his words returned now, as if my heart remembered what my mind had forgotten. "Evelyn," his voice echoed gently inside me. "Evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it wears good intentions, like a mask." My hands tightened around the blanket. "And justice," the memory continued, "is not revenge. It's simply the moment you stop carrying someone else's guilt." A single tear slipped down my cheek. Because it was true. I had carried so much guilt for not seeing the signs, for trusting the wrong person, for staying quiet too long. But this part, this battle, this justice, it wasn't mine to feel guilty for. Orion Sage's voice softened even more. "Forgiveness is not a door you owe anyone. It is a path you choose only when your heart is ready, and not a moment sooner." I closed my eyes. I didn't know if I would ever forgive Marissa. I didn't know if Mark would either. But Orion Sage was right. The story wasn't finished yet. Not for any of us. And the next step, whatever it was mine to choose. The investigation moved forward, faster than I expected. Papers were reviewed. Bank statements traced. Every signature I didn't remember signing was pulled apart by people who knew how to see the truth hidden between lines. Piece by piece, Marissa's version of the story collapsed. And yet, even as the legal process took shape, the emotional wreckage inside our family remained scattered, sharp, fragile, unresolved. Mark apologized every day. Not in loud, dramatic ways, but in small ones. Cooking dinner, checking my medicine, pausing before he spoke, as if choosing his words with new care. Grief changes people, sometimes for worse, sometimes for better. One evening, while he washed dishes and Lena organized a folder of evidence, I stepped onto the porch to breathe the cool night air. The sky was dark, no moon, just a scattering of stars pressed across the quiet. And somewhere, inside that silence, Orion Sage's words still lingered. "Justice arrives when you stop carrying someone else's guilt." I repeated it softly to myself, letting it settle. Because the truth was, I no longer carried Marissa's choices. I no longer carried the shame of trusting the wrong person. I no longer carried the fear of being alone in a house that was supposed to be mine. But forgiveness, that was different. As I stood there, looking at the outline of the city lights in the distance, I realized something important. I didn't know if forgiveness was in my future. Not yet, maybe not ever. Some wounds close, some stay tender, and some you simply learn to live beside. When I walked back inside, Lena looked up from the table. "Mom," she said softly, "are you okay?" I nodded. "I'm getting there." And it was the truth. Not the whole truth, but enough for now. Because healing doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes it happens in small, quiet victories. A warm meal, a safe bed, a family that finally sees you clearly. But even with all that, there was still one question inside me I couldn't answer. Not yet, maybe not alone. So I leave it here, not as an ending, but as a space for the truth to breathe. If you were in my place, after everything Marissa did, after everything she took, after everything she almost stole forever, would you forgive her or let her face the consequences on her own? I still don't know my answer. Maybe that's okay. Thank you for being here with me, for listening, for holding this story with me. Your time means more than you know. If this story touched you, your like might help it reach someone who needs it today. And if you want to walk with me through more stories like this, stories of pain, truth, and the quiet wisdom of Orion Sage, you're welcome to stay and subscribe. The door is open, always.